Graham Potter is about to implement huge tactical changes to West Ham that could revolutionise the team, including a completely new role for a player that suits his tactics perfectly. The midfielder that he will make into his new Alexis McAllister, and a new attacking partnership that you won't expect but could really thrive. And there's one question mark that I've got as well that we need to talk about. But let's talk about Potter's previous tactics, because Potter's tactical flexibility means that he can implement his style of play without being constrained to a certain formation. Instead, it's about getting the highest level of performance out of a team depending on what suits the profiles best. So for example, have a look at what he did at Chelsea. Because in his first Premier League match in charge of Chelsea, he used a 4-2-2-2. But Potter also used a 4-2-3-1 like this one against Spurs, as well as a 4-3-3 like this one against Fulham. And this 3-4-2-1 was his last ever Chelsea lineup. And as you can see, so many systems and formations were used to get to this point. Now, I understand he wasn't able to find the answers, but the point is, he's more flexible than Flav at Fleet Services. For those of you who didn't get that joke, that comes from the podcast that I do with my friend Flav. It's called James and Flav for Now. Go check it out and give it a chance. And the point here is that with Potter using so many formations at Chelsea alone, does it open a can of worms when trying to analyse his West Ham setup? And of course, what about his Brighton tactics? Because I know Chelsea didn't go that well, but Brighton did. Well, interestingly, at Brighton, he had success with a totally different formation, a 3-5-1-1. He didn't use any wing-backs, and instead he had Trossard and Solly March playing out wide for him. So when we're now focusing on West Ham, it's the player profiles that I think we need to begin with, because Graham Potter will be analysing what he has and then deciding on the best way to play his attacking brand of football. And some might feel like that's indecisiveness. I disagree. That is having the ability, the knowledge to find different answers and having an array of different answers that you feel comfortable coaching and implementing in a game situation. And that's something that's going to be crucial to find the answers in a Premier League where you've got to play every single different kind of team you can imagine. So when it comes to those profiles, once we have an understanding of that, it becomes a lot easier to decide what this formation could actually be. And so to do this, let's analyse the current squad and what that demands of Potter. So goalkeeper. Goalkeeper could already be a potential problem for Graham Potter, as he liked them to play out from the back. And at Brighton, he had a lot of success doing this, most notably whilst using 3 centre-backs. What Potter wants is his goalkeeper to be really comfortable at playing out from the back. But what I find fascinating is that at Brighton, he had Robert Sanchez between the sticks, and at Chelsea, he struggled at times. But at Brighton, he was generally okay. This season, West Ham have mainly used Fabianski and Areola. Areola has struggled at times to cope with the demands of a high line in front of him, and after a great year last season, he has been really poor this season. Fabianski has been better, but he's not a ball-playing goalkeeper at heart. And the fix I think that Potter may go for is making sure that the defenders in front of him are extremely comfortable with the tactical approach and having a great understanding of where they are going to be at all times, and therefore make the goalkeeper's life just that little bit easier. And for this reason, I think that he may try to bring Areola back into the fray if he can provide that comfort blanket via the defenders. And maybe that's an area where they'll look to bring in a new goalkeeper in January to help fix that, to have someone who can play that little bit better when it comes to those progressive passes as a goalkeeper and have the ball and feel comfortable in that world. Well, stop teasing us, you Who will the centre-backs be? All right. Well, despite having a very high line at times, Brighton's centre-backs under Potter, sorry, I'm trying to move on from that, never truly had that lightning recovery speed. Often you see a back three of Adam Webster, Lewis Dunk and Joel Veltman, none of which are that quick, but all of them are super comfortable on the ball. And interestingly, despite being one of the back three on paper, one of them was more of a fullback in possession. For West Ham under Lopetegui, I felt for Max Kilman this season because he was bought for a lot of money and he hasn't really been given the opportunity to shine, mainly because he's not been given a chance to form a partnership with any of the other centre-backs due to the chopping and changing of personnel, because when you're not getting results, often you're going to try something different. Todibo has been very hit and miss for me, despite arriving also with a lot of promise. This squad is a good squad. But one player who isn't even a centre-back would be given a crucial role, in my opinion, as one of the centre-back 3 in this system. And that man is Aaron Wan-Bissaka. And I know this will cause debate because he's actually having a really good season and been a real attacking threat. That in itself rings alarm bells for the rest of the team. Hear me out here. Because I think in build-up, it could look a little bit like this. Todibo, Kilman, and Wan-Bissaka. Kilman and Todibo probably make the most sense here. Kilman having played in a back three before at Wolves, and Todibo has played in a similar progressive system in the past and was actually bought by Barcelona in 2019 because of this exact fact. Because Barcelona, believe it or not, a bit of insight here on this tactical channel, they don't bump along. Okay. So, let's talk about Aaron Wan-Bissaka because I think Aaron Wan-Bissaka is the talking point here, let's be honest. Because I think that Potter could look to replicate Veltman's half centre-back, half full-back role with Aaron Wan-Bissaka that I think has been thrown out there as a talking point a lot during his Man United career. And Wan-Bissaka has been one of West Ham's best players this season. Absolutely. And one, I think he'd do really well in this role. And yes, it's not him unlocking defences like he has been, but that's not what you're bought in for anyway. And I also think it would allow for a clever tactical approach that we'll touch on in the midfield section. Now, the midfield is everything for Brighton. At Brighton, he had the likes of McAllister, Caicedo, Gross, and Lallana, and he found a way of getting them all into the team. And whilst also being able to play with very attacking wingers at the same time, essentially disregarding any notion of having proper fullbacks. And despite, let's be fair, looking poor at times, there's actually a lot to get excited about when it comes to West Ham's midfield profiles and how they would relate to Potter ball. From West Ham's midfielders, you've got some really exciting players that it just hasn't worked so far. But I think with a more considered approach when it comes to being in possession with Potter, I think they could do really well. Lucas Paquetá, who could assume the role of a player that Potter worked wonders with at Brighton. You've got Carlos Soler, who played in possession-heavy systems previously, and he was absolutely excellent at Valencia, playing in that kind of malleable position. And Guido Rodriguez, who has played some fantastic forward passes this season, which you can see by his passing flow map. And overall, he's struggled due to West Ham's lack of control, and because of that, I think his mobility, which isn't the best, it gets exposed. Then you have the likes of Souček, who I think isn't really built for Potter ball, for his style of play. So how do you get all of these profiles to fit in one system? And what about the wingers? Well, this is where you're going to have to continue to hear me out. You have no choice. You're here now. Just stay with me, okay? Because firstly, I think Rodriguez at the base, that buttery biscuit base, are we still allowed to do that? Probably not. I think that's something that makes sense for Potter in terms of being able to get on the ball, to be confident on the ball, to make progressive passes and that ability to move the ball into the next third. But to do this effectively, Potter, I think, will likely want to split 2 8s either side. And I think it feels pretty obvious to me who those two should be. I think you kind of double down on the quality that you've brought into the team. So either side of him, those players that can stay in those half spaces. And I think a role for Soler it's something that he will definitely enjoy. And I think he's familiar with that from his time at PSG. And it will allow players like Rodriguez to get on the ball, but also for those centre-backs to play the ball through to the likes of Soler and Paquetá. But as those 8s, they play coming back and getting on the ball when they need to, but also getting on when they want to as well. And then Rodriguez just popping about, picking up the ball, having a great bloody time, and just knitting it together. Soler occasionally actually played as a right midfielder at Valencia, so he's well suited to this Mezzala role. Meanwhile, we have Paquetá, and I see a lot of similarities to Alexis McAllister, someone who was a 10 initially, but for both their national teams, they've played in a deeper role. They've got ability to play as an 8 as well, and even a 6, and they've been excellent there. And I think Paquetá, he could be perfect in a deeper role in this team. And I think Paquetá, having the opportunity to have that deeper role at times, I think it could be perfect for him, because when playing in a deeper role in a defensive team, it's a problem because, you're always struggling to get up the pitch, especially if you're not good enough on the ball. But in this team, the way they're going to play with the other tidy players that are comfortable having the ball, standing still with the ball, shielding the ball, keeping the ball, I think in that possession-based team, even in that sort of initially deeper role, your likelihood is that you're going to be able to work up the pitch and get yourself into the opponent's half. So you're not going to lose, some of the best bits of Paquetá. You're actually going to get the complete package of him. And this is why it's important from a build-up perspective. By having those three midfielders, one in the centre and two in the half spaces, it gives the back three so many forward central passing lanes when passing out from the back. And if you can beat the press and be good enough in possession, then you can also suck in the opposition to give you space down the road and up the pitch. And Potter is always keen on build-up taking place centrally. And this is partly because at Brighton, he didn't use traditional fullbacks, as they had Veltman, who would move over to this right-hand side. He'd move from right-sided centre-back into that more full-back position. So let's bring in the wingers that kind of look, when we do it, like wing-backs, but I can assure you that's not going to be the case. And I'll show you exactly why that's not going to be the case. Because of, the Veltman tactic. The ability to move that right centre-back over and to the side. So if we move it along, get the players in the positions that they would actually be in, it would be far more like this. And what you would have here is Kilman and Todibo being that too, because they're so confident and comfortable on the ball. And Wan-Bissaka would be receiving the ball from this fullback position a lot more. But what that means here, what's crucial here, is Kudus. Kudus then doesn't have to get back like you would imagine he would do in a normal 3 and then a 5 there, because it's not that. It's different in possession. It's confident, it's positive, and because of that possession-based idea, you've got someone like Wan-Bissaka who is steady and will give good players the ball quickly. And as long as you've got those good players, and you do in Soler, Rodriguez and Kilman, you're going to be able to keep the ball. And then from there, you're allowing yourself to give the players that you want, like Kudus, the opportunity to get on the ball, high up the pitch. And it will take away some of those defensive duties for him, which is great. Also with Wan-Bissaka, he's fantastic at getting back. He's fantastic one-on-one. He's fantastic in transition in terms of those long drives back that you have to do sometimes, which will occur at times. And for Somerville, maybe there's going to be that little bit more defensive work that he might need to do. But as I say, in a possession-based system, because you look after the ball, you can kind of take those risks and the runs there and back. It's not going to be like a basketball game. That's going to mean that, when you do have to do that defensive work, you're kind of willing to do that because you're going to be able to attack again in a minute. So the key thing here is with those wingers, don't expect them to be anything like standard wing backs. That's not what you're going to see, in my opinion. And I think that's something to be excited about. Right, let's talk forwards, because with the forwards, I think there's something interesting here that would absolutely work, but might be a bit of a surprise to some. Now, what we could expect is for West Ham to have two up top. One being a shadow striker and the other leading the line. The shadow striker could be Kudus, or he could be used on the wing. And the striker will likely be a penalty box finisher who has some physical presence to facilitate the technical players around him. And he'll probably will have come for quite a large fee in the summer, which works out brilliantly, doesn't it? So for me, this is where the combination of Bowen and Füllkrug, oh, not Soufal, nearly Soufal, nearly made it in there, and Füllkrug could be fantastic once Bowen is back from injury. Bowen and Kudus could interchange as well, which I think would be really, really lovely to see. I think they would enjoy that as well. And it could be like the Red Arrows at some points when they do want to, counter-attack in the right way, which is something that West Ham have been good at, certainly with David Moyes. And them interchanging, I think, would be really, really nice. And again, in a possession-based system, that's something that will be available to them because they'll know where everyone is and they'll have that second more than they would normally. But Bowen, I think, could really excel in these central areas. For West Ham, he's done well and scored goals from a central position. But even in those whole City days, a long, long time ago, he's a fantastic finisher and great on the edge of the box, being able to scurry and get a shot off, get a yard. And he's such a brilliant finisher. And I think in an attacking system like this, his shot volume would absolutely increase. And then you got Füllkrug. Now, Füllkrug has always been a system player. When you surround him with technical players and dominance, he thrives. And Potter, throughout his managerial career, has never had someone who you can depend on to score goals when supplied with the right chances. And I think it's an absolute match made in heaven. But of course, tactics is one thing. There's so much else swirling about when it comes to being a manager, and I think being a manager at West Ham. I talk about that in my reaction video to the news that he's going and that Graham Potter's on his way on the More James Allcott channel, my brand new channel. Let me know what you think and how long it will take for Graham Potter to fully imprint his system onto this West Ham team.